Hi everyone, it's Mrs. Smith, and now we're going to read Judicial Branch in a Flash. I will do my best to not have any interruptions, but I can't promise anything. Okay, ready? It's all about the robes. See the dudes in the robes? Actually, it's not. The cool black robes judges wear are the first things a lot of people think of when they hear the word judicial. But the first thing you really need to know is how courts were created. The only court the United States Constitution actually creates is the Supreme Court, the highest court in the country. The Constitution also allows Congress to create other courts. When Congress created those courts, the federal court system was born. The next section, 2 court systems. Here's the confusing part. There are 2 systems of courts in the United States. The federal court system, which deals with disputes about laws that apply to the entire United States, and the state court systems mostly deal with disputes about state laws. Each state has its own court system created by its own state constitution. Whether people take their case to a federal or state court depends on the laws involved in the case. The good news is that the state court systems usually work just like the federal court system. So here we have a map of the United States, and it explains that the federal system is divided into districts called circuits. Okay. Which court to use? Each court system deals with certain kinds of cases. Federal courts hear cases involving federal laws, the U.S. Constitution, or disputes between citizens of different states. State courts hear cases involving state laws or the state's constitution. They also deal with disagreements between citizens of the state. State courts normally resolve the kinds of issues you hear about in everyday life, such as family matters, accidents, crimes, and travel violations. So over here, we have most legal issues that people have get resolved in the state court system. Criminal versus civil. Most trials you see on TV involve a person who has been accused of a crime. But criminal cases are not the only kind of cases that go to trial. Sometimes people have a disagreement that they can't resolve on their own. Often, one side feels that the other side violated their rights in some way. This kind of case is called a civil case. The goal of a civil case is not to find out whether someone is innocent or guilty, but to decide which side's version of the story is correct. So over here, we can see it says civil relating to the rights of citizens, and criminal is relating to a crime. Makes sense. All right, you're on trial. The trial court is the first court to hear a case. Both the state and federal systems have trial courts. In the federal system, the trial court is called a district court. In the trial court, lawyers use evidence to try to prove that their client's side of the story is what really happened. Evidence can be almost anything: witnesses, videos, photographs, a letter, a piece of fabric, or even a murder weapon. In a jury trial, a group of 12 people listen to the evidence and decides who wins the case. The decision is called the verdict. In a bench trial, there is no jury, so the judge gives the verdict. It's not over till it's over. Oh, sorry, over here. You're supposed to notice which roles you recognize. So, who's the witnesses? Who are the lawyers? Who's the jury? Who's the judge? Yeah, you guys can figure that out. All right. Back to it's not over till it's over. Losing in the trial court doesn't mean the case is over. If the losing side thinks there's been an error, they can ask a higher court to review the verdict and place it with a different decision. The courts above the trial court are called the appellate courts. The federal system and most state systems have 2 appellate level courts: a court of appeals and a Supreme Court. Your state might have a different name for these courts. Asking an appellate court to review a case is called making an appeal. So here we go in our little notepad. It says appellate courts can affirm the trial court's decision, letting it stand. All right, so whatever the first court said, they say, yep, they got it right the first time. Or they can reverse the decision and say, nope, they didn't get it right. There's more evidence, and they can change the decision. Or they can remand the case, go back to the trial court, and start all over again at the trial court level. Got all that? Going up and sometimes down. Want to sound like a legal eagle? Then you can say that a case is brought up on appeals. Cases are thought of as going up through the court system. A trial court decision is brought up to the appeals court. An appeals court decision is brought up to the highest court. Once a case has been heard by the highest court, there is nowhere left to go. Appellate courts review lower courts' decisions to see if a mistake was made. When an appellate court makes a decision, all lower courts must follow that decision in the future when the same issue comes up again. So here's our little up arrows. See, you start at the trial court, which hears the case for the first time, looks at the evidence, and decides who's right. If the one side doesn't like how that the outcome of that, they can appeal it. So they're going to go up to the appeals court. And at the appeals level, they review the trial court's decision to see if there was any error. And any decisions that they make at this level have to be followed in the trial courts. If that isn't a satisfactory decision, it can then be brought up to the Supreme Court, who reviews the appeals court decisions for any error. And any decisions that they make at the Supreme Court level has to be followed by everybody else, the Court of Appeals and the trial court. Got it? I love little pictures. All right, judges and more judges. When a trial court has only one, While a trial court only has one judge, most Court of Appeals cases are heard by 3 judges. When more than one judge listens to a case, the group of judges is called a panel. Usually the judges decide the case by majority vote. At the appellate level, there is never a jury. That's because a jury's only job is to look at evidence and decide what happened. In an appellate court, the judges are deciding whether legal errors have been made. For the losing side in the Court of Appeals, there is one more chance, the Supreme Court, which is the highest court. So does that make sense? In the trial court, the jury's looking at all the evidence and making a decision. And then at the Court of Appeals and the Supreme Court, they're also looking at what happened in the courtroom and with the case in the trial court. So they're not just looking at evidence, they're looking at the whole process. Okay, and that's final. At the U.S. Supreme Court, a panel of 9 justices hears the cases. State Supreme Courts often have fewer justices. The Supreme Court gets to choose which cases to take, and it doesn't take very many. Often, cases that make it to the Supreme Court are disputes about whether a law goes against the Constitution. Once the Supreme Court has said something is unconstitutional, that's it. Only the court itself can reverse that decision. The power of deciding what is constitutional is called judicial review. The U.S. Supreme Court has this power over federal laws. State Supreme Courts have this power over state laws.
The next couple pages on here are activities for you to do. We have taken those and we've put some of them into that Google form that I showed you earlier so that you can do them easily on there. We haven't used all the questions, just some of them. Google form just seemed like the easiest way to do it. And we talked about that earlier. Okay. Good luck. Thanks. I'll talk to you soon. Email me if you need anything, or Mrs. Smith. Bye.